Over the weekend, there was some FA Cup football on. We saw quite a large upset. Wrexham beat Coventry 4-3. Quite a thrilling game, a lot of goals, red card in there as well, a lot of drama. With their new ownership, they've made a lot of headlines and caught a lot of people's attention worldwide. We thought we'd make a video about this today because I guess this is probably the first time we've seen Wrexham make headlines because of their football. I guess up to now it's been, A-listers, Hollywood celebrities, buy a football club. We've spoken in the past about the impact they've had on the city and even the country of Wales. But yeah, this is the first time that an actual football result and them causing quite an upset and beating a team 3 divisions above them, it's kind of put a spotlight on them. So, Scott.
Yeah, I think you put it, put me on the spot there. I was like, where's he going with this?
Take the reins.
Well, I think you put it pretty much bang on, where obviously they've had so much hype with, the Disney documentary. Anyone that follows Ryan Reynolds has probably seen it, but I think pretty much bang on about, all right, now their football has actually grabbed them a headline, because last year you saw they missed out on winning the league, but now they've obviously created a massive headline, which here in Australia, we might not see too much of the FA Cup, but we're seeing it through our feed and stuff, and there's a huge upset that's occurred. I think there were 2 over the weekend, but it doesn't take the Disney documentary or Ryan Reynolds or whoever to give them a plug. They're getting it purely based on their football, which I think you probably want to see these other things kind of take a back seat. Now we're putting in performances, we're getting promoted, we're winning FA Cup games and things where previously maybe they've not had that just yet.
They've bought the club now, they need to come in, they need to invest here, bring players in, sign new staff, bring in the sponsors, start creating this channel or this chain of income to the club, get the exposure. But obviously the end goal of everything is always going to be results on the pitch.
Yeah.
And week to week they're playing other teams in Wales and in England in the same division, and they're still grinding out games. They're trying to get out of that league. They've come out and said quite publicly the goal is to get promoted. They want to move into League 2, maybe one day get to the Premier League. I mean, that's going to be a massive fairy tale, but the FA Cup is, I guess, a very great opportunity for clubs like Wrexham to get into and see how they fare against some of the big boys in British football. They beat Coventry, obviously they're a championship team, so they're the second tier in England. So you've got the 20 Premier League teams, and then Coventry are part of the 24 in the championship. Wrexham now, you've got Division 1, Division 2, then finally the National League where Wrexham are. So it's quite a great achievement that they've managed to beat them.
Yeah, to even be there in the first place. Obviously the owners, as well as they've invested, like you said, into the staffing and all these other facilities and improving so many things about the club. And if they kept doing these things and they didn't receive a result, they think, are we putting in money and, we're not really seeing an end result. But I think a win like this kind of reaffirms it and almost doubles down, okay, this is the best win that we've had in however long. Let's keep on this track, let's get promoted. And then I think it just builds traction, because the last thing you would want is for the owners to come in, invest these money, put in, anyone that's seen the documentary, they obviously do a lot behind the scenes with the club as well, where if the results aren't coming through, all of that's kind of lost. This, puts them in the spotlight for their football. It doesn't, take that documentary for them to get attention. That headline was coming out regardless, because it is such a massive upset because of the gap between the 2 teams.
Yeah, I think a huge thing for me, what the documentary's done and this whole, investment in the club has done, there's so many more eyes on the team of Wrexham, and that's worldwide. So these aren't people who are new to Wrexham or new to the league, new to the country, whatever it is. They're new to the sport in general. So I know in the US, there's been a huge spike in viewers and fans of Wrexham. If you've got Americans at home and they're used to watching basketball, American football, hockey, whatever it might be, those popular sports, rarely do you see upsets like this. And I think you see from their famous tweets that they've put out and post on Instagram and whatnot, both Ryan and Rob, where they'll just say the sport as a whole has just captivated them, the emotion and whatnot, just because you can get those upsets.
Well, you wonder the players in the team, what is the top level quality they've played before against, and probably for a lot of the players, this is probably the best that they've come up against.
This will be the best team and the best set of players they've shared a pitch with, for sure.
I think what you said about Wrexham now getting an increased following from the US, probably off the back of Ryan Reynolds and obviously the documentary and things that come out. But imagine this new club kind of coming through, and then you've got new fans to the sport, kind of falling in love with the club. What that will do in terms of their growth will be massive, because they don't have a connection to some other team or to, a larger club. This potentially may be their club. So they'll just potentially watch all of their games, or they'll follow it with a bit more interest than, say, some of the other smaller clubs that exist in these smaller leagues. For them, if you've watched the documentary, naturally you're going to have a bit of a love for the club. You're wanting them to win and be that underdog, so you kind of go into the game with that emotion as well.
Kind of on that note, some of the engagement that we've had from people watching our videos, we've done obviously two about Wrexham already that people can find, but some of the comments that we've had where we've mentioned Wrexham, there's some Americans who have commented and they've mentioned things like there's more viewers of Wrexham in the States than there are viewers watching even certain MLS teams over there. So, there's a team on the other side of the world that people are just like, oh, I know nothing about the sport, I don't know anything about the league, the history of the club or whatever, but all of a sudden you're glued into Wrexham. And like you said, it's not like, oh, I've got my team and Wrexham's like my second team that I follow now. For so many people, it's now, oh, Wrexham is my first and only team.
Well, now they have a passion for the team as opposed to a passion of potentially the quality of football they might be playing. Because obviously if you compare this to a game in the EPL, if you've watched a lot of football, you can obviously see that if they're new to the sport and this is all they're being exposed to, and maybe they're watching some MLS games where maybe the quality's not as great of a jump between, say, that to the EPL, they're just going to be pumping with passion and I think always just wanting them to do well, and that's probably what's going to drive them moving forward. And the fact that it's a football result and then it's not some plug from someone that's famous or TikTok or the documentary, I think it's awesome that they've been able to get this win.
Well, so many times in the past when there has been upsets in the FA Cup, I mean, that's one of the, they say it's the magic of the FA Cup, and it's why so many people are glued to it, because you will get a lower league team versus a higher league team. And obviously 9 times out of 10, maybe more, the higher league team's going to win, but it's those little upsets that do occasionally happen, and it's something that's you probably don't get across too many other sports where you can just get a team get over the line against a team that they should never be beating.
Well, I think it is probably quite unique to football where you've obviously got teams from different divisions competing against one another. Well, I can't really think, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I can't really think of too many other sports out there that would have potentially, an NBA team versus some 5th grade team.
Yeah.
But they eventually might come up if they keep winning, come up against an EPL club, and that's not going to happen in any other sport where you're coming from, they're just professional, right? They're
the lowest level of professional.
Lowest level, and then for them to potentially be versing
the pinnacle of professional,
or people that they would idolise.
Yeah,
I think I said to you before, they would be like rock stars. They would be going in, they'd be going after the game. These are things that they're going to be talking about to their kids of, oh, you remember when we did this, or however. Because I think the thing with the Wrexham players as well, not all of them are probably going to be there. As they go up, some of these players probably aren't good enough for the next league. So for them, these games are just going to be things that they hold on forever. It's remember when we went to Coventry and we beat them? And I think the way that the game was a bit of a thriller, 3-4 plus the red card in there as well, where, had a lot of excitement. Imagine being a viewer from America watching that, as opposed to, say, them winning 1-0 or getting through on penalties or whatever it might be. It's just a game that's filled with excitement. So you're thinking, so much is going on here. And
kind of on the flip side of that, where I mentioned, the Americans were so high scoring, and as a result, you probably don't see as many upsets. At times, I feel like football's got a bit of a bad reputation in the States. People just think there's no goals in it, must be a bit boring. It's not as physical as a lot of the other games, but it's kind of, for me, at least, such a good thing that the sport and the team of Wrexham's going to get so much publicity. I'm kind of glad it was in a 4-3 game. It's a bit like the World Cup final where, not everyone's really watching this sport day to day. Your average Joe who's never watched a game in his life could potentially tune in and watch the World Cup final given the magnitude of the game. And things like that, I'm like, oh, if you're going to watch one game, I'm glad it's this one, because it's kind of shown you that bit of excitement, so much emotion in it. And
no, I'd agree. And I think for them as well, even as a fan, if I think sport teams that I follow and things, and if they win a big final or, win the league or however, or the Champions League, you want it to be a good final. So it's something that is remembered. And then I think the emotion of the game, let's say that you win against the team 2-0 and, it's a pretty comfortable win as opposed to, a really thrilling game that kind of went down to the last minute. At the end of it, you're probably going to think, oh, that was the best game I've ever seen. Yeah. Even if it's your own team, you sometimes might take the easy win, but after, and I think for the Wrexham fans, they're going to, just what it would have done for them watching it, getting involved.
There's so much optimism, they would have come in with plans, one day we're going to get promoted, we're going to get out of the league, we're going to move into the next league and go up and get into the FA Cup and versus these teams. But to actually get there and get a result, I think is actually cementing your plans and showing you that things are paying off. Obviously, Coventry get a red card and whatnot, and people could argue on another day, Wrexham would lose that, but they've won when it matters. And yeah, I think it's solidifying that what they're doing at Wrexham, all the investment that they've made up to now, they're making steps forward. I mean, there's so many clubs in the past where potentially new owners come in and they've spent a lot of money and they've signed players or whatever, and it's just not worked out. And yeah, something as small as just one game in the FA Cup, I think for me has definitely gone, oh, okay, they're definitely moving forward, and probably gives these players hope that they can continue on this season and win the league, and maybe if they can beat a Championship side, maybe they can beat like a lot of League 2 sides and just continue to move forward and progress.
So you've got people that might be a bit indifferent about Wrexham, and maybe they don't get too much into the hype, but now they've won a really big game where now they think, okay, actually this is something I can jump on. They've now got a result. It's going to be a pretty exciting finish to their league race as well. I think them and maybe Notts County. Yeah, they're at the top. And just the hype of this, how many people now jump on that race to win the league over the next however many weeks.
So they're versing Sheffield United in the next round.
Yeah.
They're another championship team. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they do with them, see if they can keep the run going, keep the magic alive, keep the fairy tale.
I think, like you said, there are so many cases of, this magic run through the FA Cup, and for Wrexham to get it of all teams at the moment, with all the hype they've got, probably adds a little bit more to it.
Well, everyone loves an underdog, so it's going to be great to see how they go. Yeah. And for anyone who's watched the documentary, they've obviously got a huge backstory now behind the scenes, and probably know the club a lot better than a club they've just seen, oh, this team got a result, got an upset, let's just see how they go. But this is, it feels like we know so much about them, we know so many of the players, we know like the personal lives, we know the owners.
It creates a bit more of a passion, and especially if you're new to the sport, to fall in love with the club or to fall in love with the sport, you do require a passion for a team. Like, we've got our own sporting teams that we love and we'll follow to the day that we die, but that's built up over a number of years. But I think having something like that documentary somewhat accelerated that, because you get an inside look of the players, their personalities, and you see their passion and you think, okay, this is very easy to follow and this is very easy to jump on, where potentially, if you're new to the sport, just randomly pick a team.
Yeah, you're actually choosing the club because of what it stands for and a lot of the values it has. I mean, there's so many teams, if you think, oh, I'm going to get into basketball for the NBA, oh, I like these guys' colours, or like this one player. Whereas there's a whole story behind it that you can really buy into.
Yeah, inside view, and then obviously you've got the passion of the fans as well. It's the best underdog story that I've heard probably. I was going to say this year, but it's New Year.
Like, the last 10 days, it's going to be hard to beat that one.
But probably the last 12 months, I couldn't think of too much more, especially in football.
As we've said, like the FA Cup is just such a great opportunity for the sport and teams who play it, especially in the UK, to play those high teams and have the chance to make these upsets. And that's why people love it, and that's why there is a common phrase about the magic of the FA Cup, and everyone just loves to see it. It's why we love the sport. It's why we follow these teams, and human nature as well. Everyone loves an underdog. It's always great to see.
Yeah, everyone does love an underdog, and I think this probably gives the biggest chance to create that underdog story, because you've got, I guess, such small clubs coming against massive giants.
Yeah.
So
that's it from us today about Wrexham and their FA Cup upset, or the FA Cup delights. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you watched the game and what you thought of it. Obviously, there's a red card, a lot of drama in there. Goal fest as well, so always entertaining to see that. Sheffield United in the next round, so let us know your predictions for that game. As always, like the video if you've enjoyed this conversation. Subscribe to the channel as well and hit the notification bell so you know when we're uploading. And I've been Ant, this is Scott. And this
Thanks for having me again, mate.
Oh, of course. And yeah, this has been Red Mate. Thanks guys, see you in the next one.